The laboratory walls had been Lyra's only companions for 7 cycles. 7 cycles of watching the twin moons of Nyx rise and fall through the viewport of her isolated research station. 7 cycles since the Elders had sentenced her to this existence, alive, but untouchable. Lyra's slender fingers moved over the holographic display, her luminescent blue skin casting soft shadows across the workstation. The bio readings were clear, another failed attempt at neutralizing her condition. She closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of disappointment settle in her chest, right between her secondary and tertiary hearts. Experiment 347, she dictated to her recording system, unsuccessful. The enzymatic compound breaks down too quickly in the bloodstream to counteract the neurotoxin secretion. The lab's environmental system hummed in response, the only sound besides her voice in the cavernous facility built into the mountainside. Beyond the reinforced walls lay the lush forests of Nyx, teeming with life she could observe but never touch. The Elders had been thorough in their punishment, constructing this prison disguised as a research station, providing her with everything needed to survive and continue her work, but nothing that would allow her to truly live. Lyra moved to the small living quarters, pressing her palm against the biosensor that retracted the wall between sections. Her quarters were sparse by design. She had long ago removed most items that reminded her of her previous life among the Nyxian society. Only a small crystalline statue remained, a gift from her mentor Professor Valen before the trial. Before everything changed. She had been their leading xenobiologist, respected for her bold theories about interspecies genetics. That respect turned to fear when she proposed integrating certain off-world genetic sequences into their own biology to enhance their natural abilities. The conservative Elders labeled her work dangerous, heretical. When she continued in secret, they didn't execute her as tradition demanded. Instead, they altered her biochemistry with what they called the curse of isolation. Her skin now produced a powerful neurotoxin activated by contact with any living Nyxian tissue. The first and last time she had touched another after the procedure, a research assistant who didn't know about her sentence, the young male had collapsed in agony. He survived, but the memory of his screams haunted her dreams. The station's alert system suddenly pulsed with red light, breaking Lyra from her dark thoughts. Unidentified object entering atmosphere, the automated system announced. Trajectory indicates impact within 5 kilometers of this location. Lyra rushed to the main console, activating the external cameras. A streaking light cut through Nyx's perpetual twilight sky, leaving a trail of smoke and debris. Not a meteor, the descent was too controlled, despite being clearly damaged. A ship. An off-world ship. Her hearts accelerated to a dangerous rhythm. No vessels were scheduled to visit Nyx. The planet was classified as a protected biological reserve, off-limits to all but authorized Nyxian researchers. She watched as the craft disappeared below the treeline, followed by a distant tremor that shook dust from the ceiling. Lyra hesitated, her mind racing with possibilities and dangers. Protocol demanded she alert the Elders immediately of any off-world contact. Instead, she moved to the equipment locker and removed a protective suit. For the first time in 7 cycles, Lyra prepared to leave her prison. Someone had arrived on her world. Someone who might not carry Nyxian biology, someone she might be able to touch without causing pain. Someone who might not know she was cursed. The trek through Nyx's dense forest was treacherous, even in Lyra's protective suit. Bioluminescent flora lit her path as she navigated toward the crash site, environmental scanner clutched tightly in her gloved hands. She moved cautiously, not just from the unfamiliar terrain, but from the surreal feeling of being outside her laboratory for the first time in 7 cycles. As she approached the crash site, Lyra's scanner detected an atmosphere breach in the vessel and a single life form inside, still alive, but with vitals fluctuating. The ship itself was unlike any she'd seen in the Nyxian archives, smaller than their typical vessels, with strange markings along its scorched hull. She approached the damaged craft, finding its entry hatch partially open. Inside, slumped against a control panel, was a being Lyra had only seen in research files, a human. Male, by her assessment, with bronze skin and dark hair matted with blood from a gash on his forehead. The human stirred as she entered, eyes widening at the sight of her. He tried to speak but coughed violently instead, reaching for what appeared to be a breathing apparatus nearby. "I mean no harm," Lyra said, using the universal translation matrix in her suit. "Your ship is damaged. You're injured." The human managed to attach the breathing device to his face, taking several deep breaths before responding. "Ship, atmospheric, regulator, failing." He coughed again. "Can't breathe, your air." Lyra assessed the situation quickly. The human couldn't survive in Nyx's atmosphere, and his ship was beyond immediate repair. Her laboratory was the only safe haven within range. "I can help you," she said, "but we must move quickly." Through labored breathing and pained movements, she helped the human gather essential items, his breathing device, a small pack of supplies, and what appeared to be a communication unit. The journey back to her laboratory was slow and difficult, supporting the injured human through the dense forest. Once inside her facility, Lyra activated the environmental controls to create a habitable atmosphere for her unexpected guest. The human's breathing steadied as the air composition changed, and he eventually removed his breathing apparatus. "Thank you," he said, his voice clearer now. "My name is Kai Tenzin. Earth Exploration Corps." "I am Lyra," she replied, maintaining distance. "Xenobiologist of Nyx." Kai attempted to stand but winced in pain. "I think I've broken something." "Stay still," Lyra instructed, moving to her medical cabinet. "I can treat your injuries, but—" She hesitated, looking down at her gloved hands. "I must warn you. My touch is toxic to my kind. I don't know what effect it might have on you." Kai looked at her with curiosity rather than fear. "Why? Is it a disease?" "A punishment," Lyra replied, the word bitter on her tongue. She explained her situation as she prepared medical supplies, keeping the details brief but honest. "Let me understand," Kai said, watching her carefully. "You were punished for your research with biological isolation, and you've had no physical contact with anyone for 7 years?" "7 cycles," Lyra corrected. "Approximately 9 of your Earth years." Kai shook his head in disbelief. "That's—" He seemed to search for words. "Inhumane." Lyra paused, the unfamiliar word striking her. "It is our way," she said finally, approaching with medical supplies. "I need to treat your wound, but the risk—" "We have different biology," Kai said. "Maybe I'm not affected." "The risk is too great," Lyra insisted, though something inside her, something long dormant, stirred at the possibility. Kai reached out, his movements sudden and deliberate. Before Lyra could react, his fingers brushed against her exposed wrist where her protective suit had ridden up. She gasped, waiting for his cry of pain. For the convulsions. For the guilt that would follow. Instead, Kai smiled. "See? Different biology." Lyra stared at the point of contact, her 3 hearts beating wildly. For the first time in 9 years, she felt the warmth of another's touch, and caused no pain. A warning light flickered on her laboratory security system. An automated scanner had detected the ship's crash and would soon alert the colony's security forces. Time was limited. But in that moment, as she carefully treated Kai's injuries with ungloved hands, Lyra felt something she'd forgotten existed. Hope. The laboratory that had once felt like a prison to Lyra now hummed with new energy. For 3 days, she and Kai worked together to understand his immunity to her toxic touch. Each experiment, each moment of contact, was both scientific exploration and personal revelation. Your cellular structure is fascinating, Lyra said, examining a holographic display of Kai's blood sample. Her fingers, bare and blue, adjusted the magnification with practiced precision. Human biology uses entirely different receptor pathways than Nixian physiology. The neurotoxin my skin produces simply has nothing to bind to in your system. Kai sat on the examination table, watching her work with undisguised fascination. Lucky coincidence, then? There are no coincidences in biology, Lyra replied, though a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. Only patterns we haven't recognized yet. She moved closer to him, still marveling at the ability to stand near another being without fear. In the days since his arrival, she'd grown bolder with touch, clinical examinations giving way to casual contact. The brush of fingers when passing tools. A steadying hand when he lost balance during physical therapy for his healing leg. Your ship's communication system is beyond repair, she said, changing subjects. The colony will have detected the crash by now. They'll send investigation drones soon. Kai nodded, his expression turning serious. What happens when they find me? Lyra turned away, busying herself with organizing samples. The official protocol would be to escort you to the capital for diplomatic processing. She hesitated. But my situation complicates matters. Because you're not supposed to have visitors? Because I'm not supposed to have hope, she said quietly. The silence that followed was broken by Kai's hand gently touching her shoulder. The casual intimacy of the gesture nearly undid her composure. I've been thinking, he said. The components we need to repair my ship's atmospheric regulator, they're available in your colony, right? Lyra nodded. Yes, but I can't go there. And you wouldn't survive the journey without protection. Then we adapt, Kai said, the determination in his voice reminding Lyra why humans had developed such a reputation for persistence across the galaxy. Your research was about adaptation, wasn't it? Before she could respond, the facility's perimeter alarm activated. The security display showed 3 reconnaissance drones hovering at the edge of the clearing surrounding the laboratory. They're scanning for life signatures, Lyra explained, quickly activating the external camouflage systems. They'll detect you. Can we mask my signature somehow? Lyra considered for a moment, then moved to her research terminal. Perhaps. My latest compound was designed to temporarily alter Nixian biochemistry. With modifications. They worked frantically, Lyra synthesizing a masking agent while Kai monitored the drone's scanning patterns. The solution was unstable, a temporary measure at best, but when injected, it altered Kai's bioelectric field enough to register as ambient wildlife to the drone's sensors. As the drones eventually retreated, Lyra and Kai collapsed into relieved laughter that quickly faded into something more intense. Their faces were close, the shared danger creating an intimacy neither had anticipated. Lyra, Kai whispered, his hand moving to cup her face. Their first kiss was tentative, exploratory, the meeting of 2 species, 2 souls who had found connection in isolation. As it deepened, Lyra felt a strange tingling where their lips met, a sensation neither painful nor concerning, but rather transformative. When they separated, breathless, Kai's eyes widened. Your skin, it's glowing. Lyra looked down to see her normally blue skin emitting a soft purple luminescence where he had touched her. She quickly took readings, astonished at the results. The chemical composition of my skin is changing, she said in wonder. The toxin production is being replaced by something else. What they didn't see was the 4th drone, smaller than the others, recording their discovery from the shadows of the laboratory's ventilation system, transmitting everything back to the elders who had once condemned Lyra. That night, as Kai slept, Lyra continued her research, driven by both scientific curiosity and personal desire. The changes in her biochemistry when in contact with Kai weren't just neutralizing her toxin, they were creating something new. Something that could change everything for her people. Morning came with the sound of approaching aircraft. Kai, wake up, Lyra urgently shook him. They've found us. The colony's enforcement vessels descended on the laboratory like predatory birds, their sleek hulls reflecting the morning light of Nyx's binary stars. Lyra and Kai had barely enough time to gather essential research data before the first impact shook the facility's foundations. This way, Lyra guided Kai toward her rarely used emergency exit, a narrow tunnel leading into the cave system beneath the laboratory. They're using sonic disruptors, they want you alive. Kai clutched the data crystal containing their research findings. And you? What will they do to you? I violated the terms of my isolation, she replied grimly. The punishment will be final this time. They navigated the dark tunnels, Lyra's natural bioluminescence providing just enough light to avoid pitfalls. The sounds of pursuit echoed behind them. The enforcement division was experienced in tracking fugitives, even through Nyx's complex cave systems. We can't outrun them forever, Kai said as they paused at a junction. And I won't let them execute you for helping me. Lyra touched his face, leaving a faint purple glow where her fingers traced his jawline. My research data shows something remarkable, Kai. Our contact isn't just neutralizing my toxin, it's transforming it. The new compound could potentially reverse neurological damage. A healing touch instead of a harmful one, Kai realized. That's why they want me. To understand how I triggered the change. Their moment of connection was interrupted by the distinctive whine of scanner probes. Enforcement was closing in. There's another way, Lyra said suddenly. A different path to the colony's central research hub. If we can reach my old laboratory, broadcast our findings to all research terminals simultaneously. A revolution through information, Kai finished. Lead the way. Their journey through Nyx's undercity was harrowing. Twice they narrowly avoided enforcement patrols, and once they were forced to hide in a pool of bioluminescent fungi as drones swept past. Throughout their escape, Lyra noticed the purple glow intensifying whenever she and Kai touched, spreading further across her skin with each contact. When they finally emerged near the colony's central dome, Lyra barely recognized her former home. The research center had expanded, now dominating the skyline with imposing architecture that spoke more of military might than scientific discovery. Things have changed, she whispered. The militarization I feared, it's happened. Using maintenance tunnels Lyra still remembered from her days as the colony's leading scientist, they infiltrated the research hub. The facility was largely automated, with few Nyxians present, another change that disturbed Lyra. Science had always been a collaborative endeavor among her people. They reached her former laboratory, now repurposed for military applications, and Kai set to work connecting their data crystal to the colony's information network. Almost there, he said, fingers flying over the unfamiliar interface. Once this broadcasts. The door hissed open, revealing Elder Morris, the chief architect of Lyra's punishment and now, judging by his insignia, the supreme director of the colony. Fascinating, Morris said, flanked by enforcement officers. The rumors were true. Our exiled scientist has found herself a compatible specimen. His cold eyes assessed Kai. The last pieces of my research, delivered right to me. Your research? Lyra demanded. What are you talking about? Your curse was never a punishment, Lyra, Morris replied. It was phase 1 of my adaptive defense program. You were the perfect test subject, brilliant enough to potentially find a solution, isolated enough to be controlled. He gestured to the officers. Secure them both. The human is to be taken to extraction. As the officers advanced, Kai completed the data transfer with a final command. Throughout the facility, screens illuminated with their research findings, but Morris merely smiled. Information cannot stop what's already begun, he said as the officers separated Lyra and Kai. Take them. In the struggle that followed, Lyra's skin flared with brilliant purple light each time she touched one of her captors, but instead of pain, the officers froze, their expressions shifting from determination to confusion. "What's happening to them?" Kai called out, still restrained. Lyra looked at her glowing hands in wonder. "The transformation is complete." The officers who had touched Lyra stood motionless, their eyes wide with what appeared to be revelation rather than pain. Elder Morris backed away, suddenly uncertain. "What have you done to them?" he demanded. "I'm not sure," Lyra admitted, looking at her luminescent hands. "But I think they're experiencing my memories. My isolation. My discoveries." She turned to Kai. "Our connection." The affected officers began to lower their weapons, one by one, their expressions softening from aggression to understanding. The transformation spreading through Lyra's body had evolved beyond her comprehension, no longer a toxin, no longer even just a healing agent, but something that created profound empathic connection. "Stop this immediately," Morris commanded, but his authority was rapidly diminishing as more officers came into contact with Lyra and experienced her perspective. Kai broke free in the confusion and rushed to Lyra's side. When their hands met, the purple luminescence intensified, spreading through the air like a visible wave that washed over everyone in the laboratory. "It's a field effect now," Lyra whispered in awe. "Our combined energy is amplifying it." Throughout the research hub, Nixians froze as the empathic wave reached them. Screens displaying Lyra and Kai's research data provided the scientific explanation for what they were feeling, the biological basis for a connection that transcended physical boundaries. Morris staggered backward, clutching his head as the wave hit him. "No, you don't understand what you're interfering with. The defense program is essential for our survival." "Against what enemy?" Lyra challenged, approaching him with Kai at her side. "You isolated me because you feared connection, feared what would happen if we truly understood others unlike ourselves." The elder collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed by the empathic field. "The universe is hostile," he gasped. "We needed protection. Biological superiority." "No," Kai said firmly. "What you need is understanding. Connection." As the empathic wave spread throughout the colony, the truth of Morris's program became clear. He had been weaponizing Nixian biology, using Lyra's research as the foundation for creating biological weapons disguised as evolutionary advantages. Her isolation had been both experiment and containment, keeping her alive to study the toxic touch while preventing her from discovering its true purpose. In the days that followed, the colony underwent a transformation as profound as Lyra's. With Morris removed from power, the Nixian Council reconvened for the first time in years, with Lyra invited to present her findings. "The compound created through our interaction doesn't just heal physical wounds," she explained to the assembled council, Kai standing proudly beside her. "It creates bridges of understanding between different beings." The military applications Morris envisioned pale in comparison to its potential for diplomacy, for connection between species. The council voted unanimously to dismantle Morris's defense program and establish a new research initiative focused on interspecies communication, with Lyra as its director. Later, as twilight fell over Nyx, Lyra and Kai stood on the observation deck of the newly repurposed research center, watching repair work begin on his ship. "The Council has approved your request for Earth to send a diplomatic delegation," Lyra said, her fingers intertwined with his. "The first official contact between our worlds." Kai smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "My mission was only ever meant to be preliminary exploration. They'll expect me to return with my report." "And will you?" Lyra asked, the purple glow pulsing gently where their skin touched. "I've been thinking about that," he replied, turning to face her fully. "Earth will want to understand this connection we've discovered. They'll need a research team, led by someone who understands both human and Nixian biology. A joint appointment, Lyra mused, a smile spreading across her face. Working across worlds. Across species, Kai added, drawing her close. Breaking curses and building bridges. As they embraced, the purple luminescence enveloped them both completely, visible from across the colony, a beacon of possibility in the twilight sky of Nyx. What had begun as isolation had transformed into connection, what had been designed as a weapon had become a gift. And as night fell over the research center, two beings from different worlds discovered that the universe's greatest power wasn't found in biological weapons or evolutionary advantages, but in the simple, profound miracle of touch.